Hey everyone, we are in our session, hopefully your last session, for getting you ready for taking the Algebra 1 STAR test. So we are talking about here on this first page, something that's going to be extremely important to you, and that's going to be domain and range. Domain and range will for sure be on your test numerous times. Luckily, we are going to go through the most important things that you need to know in order to master that skill. So first, we need to talk about what those mean. So when you talk about domain, that is going to deal with your x value. Okay, every time that you write this word or see this word domain, I want you to write x above it. And when you're looking at a graph, you're going to take your pencil from the left to the right along the x-axis. Okay, so that's where you're always going to look left and right. And one of my colleagues used to teach his kids a way of remembering it as domains. And then we know that if domain goes with x, then range has to go with, what do you think? Hopefully you said y. So keep in mind of domains and rangey, every time you see range, you should put a y. And instead of going from left to right like domain, we're going to go from the bottom to the top along the y-axis. So again, we're going to look at the bottom of our graph and go to the top for range. So other important pieces of information that are going to be needed when we're looking at these problems is something that students forget a lot, and that's this part right here. Y is equal to f of x. Okay, so sometimes problems will ask you for range, and they're really looking for f of x. So that is a little code word for range. Sometimes our function, though, isn't actually called f. It's called something else. Like, let's say I have my function is g. Then for its y would be equal to g of x. Okay, we're going to do one more as a test. Let's say I had a function and it was called h. Then what would y be equal to? Look at the pattern that we have so far. We had y equals f of x with function f. We have function g, y equals g of x. So for function h, what would y equal? Hopefully you said h of x. Okay? And then when we're looking at graphs, guys, just wanted to put a reminder on here. Our first symbol we have is less than, and it has an open circle. Okay? That means there's not an actual value at whatever the number is. Our greater than is also open. And then if you notice, these two symbols, they have a line underneath each one of them. And if you look at the middle here, their meaning is going to be different than less than and greater than. That line underneath tells you that it could be or equal to. And that means whatever you're graphing, it's going to be closed. So now that we've gone over some basics, let's look at some STAR questions to get you ready for this test. All right, so first on the upper left-hand corner, we have this question: which graph best represents a function with a range? So let's underline range, and right away we have to remember to put a y on top. Range is y. All real numbers greater than or equal to -6. Now I'm going to circle greater than or equal to -6. Okay? So for range, we're going to look at the very bottom of our graph. Let's look at answer choice A. The very bottom y value of our graph is 0. So that wouldn't be -6, so A cannot work. Let's look at answer choice B. Well, if we look at answer choice B, it is at -6, but all of those values are actually less than -6, and our problem wants greater than, so can't be B. When I look at C, the bottom of our graph is -6, and then if I notice all the other values on my parabola here are greater than -6, so this one looks good, but I don't want to circle it just yet. I want to check my last answer. If I look at the top of my answer choice for D, again, it's at 0. It's not even at -6, so I know it can't be D. Therefore, it has to be C. Okay, on our problem on the right, it says the graph of part of linear function g is shown on the grid. So they named it function g, so I'm just going to take note of that. It says which inequality best represents the domain. So I'm going to underline that, and remember, domain goes with your x's. Okay, don't forget, we learned domains. Okay, and again, that's going to be from the left to the right side of our graph. Okay, so if I look at the furthest part left, I have an open circle there, and that value is at -9. If I go to the furthest right of my graph, what number is that? Looks like an x value of 2. Okay, and there's a closed circle there. So if I'm looking here, I know I'm going to be an x value that's going to be in between -9 and 2. And I'm looking at that little guide up here, and it's going to tell me that if there's an open circle, then it's less than or greater than, and closed could be equal to. So I know that -9 has to be less than x, and if there's a closed circle at 2, it has to be less than or equal to. So if I'm looking at my answer choices, it looks like that will be F. And then the reason it can't be G is because they've gotten those signs confused. Wrong signs. And why could it not be H or J? If I'm looking for domain, I'm looking for X, why would these not work? I want you to pause the video and think about why would G of X not work for domain? Okay, if it's G of X, we learned earlier, that's the same thing as Y, so they're trying to trick me. There's no way that could be the answer for domain. Okay, going down to the bottom left. Okay, we have this problem that says a set of weights includes a 4-pound barbell and 6 pairs of weight plates. Each pair of plates weighs 20 pounds. If X pairs of plates are added to the barbell, so X equals pairs, something to take note of, the total weight of the barbell and plates in pounds can be represented by F of X equals 20x plus 4. So our weight equals F of X, and that equals 20x plus 4. What is the range of the function of this situation? Okay, range, we think of rangy. So we got to keep in mind, we are looking for our y values. Now there's not a graph here, so we're going to make a table. We're going to compare x and f of x. Okay, and remember, that's the same thing as y. So x is representing the pairs of weights. So I don't have to have any weights at all. Okay, so let's say I have 0 pairs of weights. That means our weight would be equal to, it says up here, 20x, so 20 times 0, because I'm plugging 0 in, plus 4, and that equals 24. Okay, let's say I have 1 pair of weights. That's going to be 20, and instead of 0, this time I'm putting 1 pair on, so I'm going to plug 1 in. Oh, and you know what, guys? I actually messed up on this first one. 20 times 0 is 0, so if I add 4, that's just 4. The second one is actually 24. Ooh, how to get my coffee today, y'all. Okay, 2 pairs of plates would be 20 times 2 plus 4, which would be 20 times 2 is 40, plus 4 is 44. Let's just look at some of the answers. Maybe I don't have to do everything. Just keep in mind, you're doing the range, so the only values I need are going to be these. So let's look. On answer choice A, it says 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, that's actually talking about the domain. So that's not going to work. When I look at B, it says 4, 24, 44. All of those are good so far. Let's look at answer choice C. The 0, 2, 4, 6. Those are not in our Y column in our table. And D is missing 24. So that means our answer has to be B. All right. Now I know it got kind of messy, so I'm going to erase some of this real quick so we can get it nice and clean. Whoop. Okay, we're looking at this problem on the bottom right. It says the population of Center City is modeled by exponential function f, where x is the number of years after the year 2015. The graph of f is shown on the grid. Which inequality best represents the range of f in the situation? So we are looking at range, which is y. So again, that's going to be from the bottom to the top of our graph. So I'm going to put a little mark here for the bottom. I got a little large there. Let's see. So right here, that should be the bottom. And then if we look up at the top, you'll notice that there is an arrow. So that means it's going to keep going up forever. Okay, so that means our values are just going to keep increasing. And if we look here, it looks like we have the value of 200,000 and 300,000. So if I'm looking right in the middle between 200 and 300, that's going to have to be 250,000. Okay? So that means our bottom value, our lowest is 250,000. We're looking for our y, and then it's going to keep going on forever. So that's our infinity. Now, when we look at our answer choices, though, they don't exactly look like that. And STAR does that a lot to try to trick you. So right off the bat, I know I can get rid of A and C. Why can I get rid of A and C? Hopefully, you saw that those have an X. And I know that those can't be right because I am looking for y. Okay? When I look at answer choice B, it says y is greater than or equal to 250,000. Well, that's what we show here. It's going to go on forever. When I look at D, it says that it's going to end up at the highest value is 1 million. But we know that up here, our graph continues forever. So D can't be it. It's got to be B. Okay, now we have one last problem here. And this is one where you're going to need your calculator. Okay? It says, what is the domain? So we're looking for the x values of f of x equals 9 minus x squared. Now, one way you can solve this, if you have a calculator, is you can just plug in to y equals and graph 9 minus x squared. Okay? A different way to solve it is to solve it algebraically. So we're going to subtract, well, I'm trying to think of how a good way to show you guys. So I know that if I want to find the range, then I'm going to set this equal to 0. So 9 minus x squared equals 0. We're going to subtract 9. We end up getting negative x squared equals negative 9. The negatives cancel. And you get, I'm going to bring this over here, x squared equals 9. So square root of 9 is negative 3 and 3. So our value is going to be somewhere in between there. So it's got to be h. Now, if you have a calculator, guys, you can put it into the graph, and you'll notice that negative 3 and 3 are going to be the values that we need. Okay, on this next page, we're looking at rates. So you're going to know when to use this formula based off of the way your answers look. So look at the first one and the second one here, and you're going to notice that these answer choices look like the formula. They have an exponent that is a variable. Okay, you can look at the next problem and you notice the exact same thing. So when you see a variable that as an exponent and you have parentheses here, then you're going to know that, hey, we're going to use this formula. Now the bad thing about it is that star is not going to give you this formula, so you're going to have to try to commit it to memory. Okay, so let's talk about what this formula means. We're looking for the final amount. Okay, that's what A is. C is going to represent the beginning amount, or, you know, really whatever is in front of the parentheses. And R is going to be the rate that they'll give you in the problem, and T is going to represent the length of time. Okay, on this problem it says, a particular type of cell doubles in number every hour. So I'm going to circle doubles in number every hour. That's important. That's actually going to be my rate. Which function can be used to find the number of cells present at the end of each hours if there are initially 4 of these cells? Well, guys, that word initially means begins. So that means I begin with 4 cells. So let's see what we have in our answer choices here. Okay, if I look at A, it says that I'm going to have my rate. Okay, so we're looking at this piece right here, that my rate is going to be halved. Well, that's not what's happening, right? Same thing with D. I'm not halving it, I'm doubling it. And then if I look at my answer choices between B and C, B says that you're multiplying and C says that you're adding 4, which is your initial number of cells. Remember, well, your initial number is got C, and there's no plus sign in between our parentheses and our number, so it has to be B. There's a lot more difficult ways to explain that, guys, but why make it harder if it doesn't have to be, right? Okay. So again, that answer choice was, the correct answer was B. Let's keep looking. Okay, this next problem. Okay. I'm going to write our formula here since we've lost it. All right, so it says the amount of fertilizer in a landscaping company's warehouse decreases at a rate of 3% per week. Decreases at a rate of 3% per week. It says the amount of fertilizer in the warehouse was originally 78,000 cubic yards. So that's what we started with. It says which function models the amount of fertilizer in cubic yards left after W weeks. So let's see if we can just eliminate any answers right off the bat. So we know that it said our initial amount, so that C has to be 78,000. So are there any answer choices that don't have that in that location? In front of the parentheses. So neither A nor B have that in the right spot. So we've got a 50% chance of getting this right. Out of 4 answer choices, we are down to 2. Okay, so if we look, the only difference between these 2 answer choices is in the parentheses. Now, if we look in the problem, it tells us that it is decreasing at a rate of 3% per week. So if I start, any percentage is out of 100, guys. So if I start with 100% and I decrease 3%, that's going to give me 97%. Now, if I turn this into a decimal, then I'm going to move my decimal over 2 spaces and get 0.97. So the correct answer should be C. Now, I'm curious, I want to know, why is D wrong? Like, what did they do? How did they get 1.03? What do you guys think? How did they get 1.03? So they got 1.03 from adding, so by increasing, didn't catch mine in there, increasing by 3%. That is why that answer choice is incorrect. All right, a big part of your STAR test is going to be linear equations. And you're going to have pictures of lines just like you see here. And so I want to talk about some basic components of your graph. Okay, so it tells us here this point right here is going to be what we call the y-intercept. And that's because, guys, it's where your line, this line, is intersecting the y-axis. Okay, and if you look, that value is -2. So -2 is your y-intercept. And we usually show it like that. Okay, let's look at our x-intercept. Okay, so that's right here, and that's where our line is touching or intersecting the x-axis, and that's at 3. So 3 is our x-intercept. One other huge piece that you're going to need to know about is how to calculate slope. Okay, so slope can be calculated by rise over run. So we're going to look at these 2 points that they bolded out for us, and I'm going to go ahead and erase the markings that I've made on the graph already, so we can start with a clear graph. Okay, so I want to do my rise, so I'm going to go up. I'm going to count how many I need to go up to get even to that other point. And it shows me that I am going up 4. And my run, so going up 4. My run is how much I'm going over to get even to that point. My run is actually going to be 6. So I'm plugging that in. I get 4, 6. And I want to just check, is this a positive or negative line? If it's positive, it's going to point to the right. If it's negative, it points to the left. This one points to the right, so I know that it is positive. And I can reduce this by dividing by 2 from top and bottom, which is going to give me 4 divided by 2 gives me 2. 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. My slope is 2/3. And we use the letter m to show that it's 2/3. M is the same thing for slope. When I look down here, it tells me at the very bottom of my page, it says slope-intercept form of an equation of a line. So guys, this is how you graph. Okay, you have to have this right here in order to graph. And it says, what is the slope-intercept equation of the line shown? Well, y and x are going to stay no matter what. So I'm just going to go ahead and plug those in. And we got our slope was 2/3. And our b, it tells us b is the y-intercept. Our y-intercept was -2, so I'm just plugging in -2. So this is the equation of the line. Okay, on our last page, the problem at the top left says, the graph of a function is shown on the grid. Which ordered pair best represents the location of the y-intercept? So remember, y-intercept is where it intersects our y-axis. So if I look, that should be this point right here. And then that point has a value of 0, -2. So that means that our answer is going to be G. Okay, the next problem at the top right says, what is the slope, or m, guys, of the graph y equals 12x minus 19. So this is in the form of that slope-intercept form that we talked about. Y equals mx plus b. And if my slope is m, that's then whatever number is in front of x, and that number is 12. So that means m equals 12, and that is our slope. So our answer is going to be D. Now, I'm not sure what these answer choices for B and C were about, but why is A not right? A says -19. What is -19 up here? It says it's B, right? That's your y-intercept. So that's how I know that that cannot be my slope. Okay, the problem below that is the next one that we're going to do. It says the graph of a linear function is shown on the grid. What is the rate of change? Which that's the same thing as slope, guys, so that's just another word for it. So we're going to put m on top of there. What is the rate of change of y with respect to x for this function? Record your answer and fill in the bubbles on your answer document. Okay, well guys, if rate of change is the same thing as slope, then I know that I can use rise over run when I'm given a graph. So if I look at my 2 points, I'm going to rise How much do I have to rise to go from 3.6 to 2? Well, let's just do some quick math. 1.6. So my rise is 1.6. And my run, it says I'm going from 5 to negative 3. So from 5 to get to 0, that is already 5. And then from 0 to negative 3, that's 3. So when I add those together, I'm actually moving 8. Now, keep in mind, if it goes to the right, it's positive. If it goes up to the left, oh, my bad. Sorry, guys. If it goes up to the left, it's negative. So that means that this is a negative slope. And I would encourage y'all, if you have a calculator, even if it's on your phone, plug in negative 1.6 divided by 8. And you will find that the answer is going to be negative 0.2. That's what you would plug in to your bubbles. All right, we've got 2 problems left. Okay, on the left-hand side, it says the graph of linear function k passes through the points negative 7, 0, and 1, 8. Now, my graph is really blurry on my screen, but hopefully it's a little better for you. I believe at this point is negative 7, 0. And then for the point 1, 8, we're going to start at the origin and move to the right one, go up 8. Right there. And then it's the line, I have to make sure that I graph that. All right, we got our line, and it's function k. Let's look at the answer choices. Which statement must be true? A, the slope of the graph of k is negative 4/3. Well, guys, if it's the slope, and it says negative, is there any way that this line can be negative? If a negative line has to point the opposite way? No, positive, so can't be the answer. B says the graph k passes through the point negative 1, negative 8. Well, let's graph it. If it's negative 1, I'm going to go 1 to the left and go down 8. Is there any way that our line's passing through that? Heck no. So that can't be our answer. C says the 0 of k is 7. Well, guys, 0 is another word for your x-intercept. And if I look at my x-intercept up here, that's negative 7. This says positive 7. Okay, so can't be our answer. D says the x-intercept of the graph of k is negative 7. And you know what, guys? We just said that, so the answer is D. Okay, our last question for this session says the graph models the linear relationship between the temperature of Earth's atmosphere and altitude above sea level. Which of these best represents the rate of change of the temperature with respect to altitude? So take a moment, guys. It's our last question together. I want you to think about what that word rate of change means. We've gone over a few different things today. Okay, if I'm only going to use one letter to represent rate of change, what is that? Say it out loud. What letter represents rate of change? Go. N. Okay, another word for it is slope. And when I have a graph, I can use rise over what? Hopefully you said run. If so, you are right. Now, want to point something out. When we look at the x-axis, okay, these numbers go by ones. If I look at my y-axis, what do those numbers go by? Are they ones? No, they're tens. Okay, so we got to keep that in mind when we are counting because they want us to mess up, right? We're not going to let them win. We are going to get this right the first time, and we're going to pass the star and be happy. So we've got to find 2 points on the line. So here's a point, and also here. So we are rising a total of 20, and we are running a total of 30. If our positives are to the upper right and our negatives are to the left, that would make this negative. So our rise was 20, our run was 30, and this was negative. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. You know what? That wasn't 30. That was 3, wasn't it? Hopefully somebody was looking at their screen like, what is she talking about? That should be 3. Okay, and then negative 20 over 3, if you think about 20 divided by 3, 3 goes into 26 times. Take away 18, we get 2, so negative 6 2/3. And that answer is very close to F. So that's it, guys. Now, keep in mind, the only way you're going to know if you gained anything from this session today is if you do your Google form quiz, and that's going to be at the bottom of this screen. So make sure that you take care of that. Okay. Best of luck on your STAR test, guys. Give it your best, and at the end of the day, no matter if you pass or fail, if you give your best, that's all that you can expect of yourself. Just make sure that when you are getting ready for the STAR test, that you look over this material and make sure that you prepare as much as possible. Best of luck.